is titled Bridging the Gap Between Orthodox and Secular Jewish Communities. My name is Moshe Hauer. I have the privilege to serve as the Executive Vice President of the Orthodox Union and to get us started together this afternoon. Bridging gaps is most often about creating understanding. And I would like to use the opportunity which I have been given to frame this discussion amongst the panelists by trying to perhaps present a bit of an understanding from the perspective, whatever perspective I can bring. Before I joined the Orthodox Union 2.5 years ago, I had the privilege to serve for about 26 years as a congregational rabbi in Baltimore, Maryland. And Baltimore, like Cleveland as well, which is represented here, I had the wonderful privilege on serving in a very embracing federation that included broad representation across the community. I think all the panelists here share that both in their commitment and in their experience. And so, if I may, I would like to make 3 points quickly. 3 points quickly to help understand. And look, I'm an Orthodox guy. I'm going to share understanding from the Orthodox perspective, the Orthodox community. First, the Orthodox community lives with 2 paramount values. One of them makes a lot more noise and gets a lot more attention than the other. The first, the one that makes more noise, is that we believe absolutely as an ikar ha'emunah, as a fundamental of faith, in the eternal truth of the Torah, in the divinity of the Torah. So we have values, biblical values, that are really, really immutable in our eyes. And it creates a lot of difference, sometimes a lot of conflict in the world around us. That's one unshakable Orthodox principle. But there's another one. We not only believe in the nitzchiyut, in the eternity of Torah, we also believe in what's called Netzach Yisrael, the eternity of the Jewish people, but not just of the Jewish people, but of Jewish people. We believe that every Jew is always a Jew. Every Jew is a brother and a sister. It doesn't matter their level of practice or the nature of their belief. The commitment to be together, the commitment to be part of one community is absolutely there. That's point number 1. But commitment still needs to be made possible. It needs to be made comfortable. There needs to be a welcoming place. And I think that when we consider that, so there have been discussions today, as there should be, and there should always be, about places for debate of issues that are very important to everybody, on which people can have different perspectives and still manage to be in the same room, to discuss, to get in the room to discuss, and to stay in the room together after the discussion. But equally important is that if someone wants to create a communal table or a communal space to bring people together, the agenda of that space needs to be a unifying agenda. Debate can be unifying, but action has to be action that unifies as well. Think, for example, about birthright. Birthright is a project of an issue that I think every one of us recognizes has to be at the absolute tippy top of the American Jewish agenda, because its inverse, so to speak, is the American Jewish crisis, Jewish identity and continuity. And we have this formula. It's not going to solve everything, but it's a nice effort. It's a significant effort. Birthright has participants at the Orthodox Union. We have a department called Israel Free Spirit. We're one of the significant birthright providers. Chabad is a very significant birthright provider. Birthright providers come from across the spectrum of the Jewish community because it's a unifying agenda item. It's something which brings us together. When I think about the success in Baltimore of keeping the community together, Erica could speak about Cleveland, I think that was one of the, so to speak, I don't want to say 10 commandments, one of the 1 commandments about how to keep it together, which is make sure that the agenda that you drive is one that everybody can join around, that it's a unifying agenda. The interest in being together is there. It just has to be made possible. If we become driven by an agenda that divides, it just isn't welcoming and it just isn't possible. And last but not least, so everybody knows that Orthodoxy is growing. And it can, sometimes Orthodox people can be a bit scary. The Orthodox growth can be something that's, can create some concerns. And it also can be seen as an incredible opportunity. Because there's a growing community of people who are really, they're all into their Judaism. They're anxious, not every one of them, but so many are anxious to be able to bring their creative energies to bear for the betterment of the Jewish community. I want to share with you a quick anecdote, just to give a sense of that social entrepreneurship that's just part and parcel of it. I was once asked a bunch of years ago, I see a couple of my friends from the Associated in Baltimore here. I was once asked by the leader of a local foundation if I could come to speak to the board of the foundation because they were puzzled by something. Every year they sent out an RFP, a request for grant proposals, to the community. And they got 4 to 6 proposals from Federation-affiliated agencies. They got 1 or 2 from the Reform congregations and community, 1 or 2 from the conservative community, and about 46 from the Orthodox Jewish community. And they said, Rabbi Hauer, could you please come to our board and explain to them like how this works, like why it is this way? You know, we have the same experience in the Orthodox Union. One of our programs, it's 5 years old. It's a magnificent program that we're very proud of. It's called the Impact Accelerator, which is a program to take successful applicants, social entrepreneurs, about social Jewish issues, about religious Jewish education issues and the like. We throw it out for 4 or 5 organizations to join a cohort to help them build their initiative, their fledgling organization, into something bigger and more powerful. We get 70 applications of new initiatives each year because the community, the Orthodox community, there's a lot of passion. There's not a lot of patience. There's a desire to make an impact, to make a difference, not to go through the arduous processes sometimes of deep organization, but to learn to get things done and move things forward. It's a fantastic energy, and it's an energy that can benefit a much broader community than it does if it's welcomed, if it's invited in, if it's recognized as an asset that all of Klal Yisrael can benefit from. Those are the 3 points of understanding that I wanted to begin this discussion by, and I would like to hand it over to the moderator for the session, to Suzanne Daft, a national member of the board of the JFMA.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Hauer, for so eloquently framing the discussion for us today. It struck me as I was sitting in a session earlier on the Abraham Accords, how wonderful it is that we were successfully able to build bridges among Israel and the Arab communities, yet we struggle so much as our own internal Jewish community to build bridges. And I'm confident if the Abraham's Accords were able to happen, we all can collectively find ways to build bridges between the Orthodox and the secular Jewish communities. But given that, I just wanted to introduce our esteemed panelists that are joining me here today. We have Ann Pava, the president of Micha Philanthropies, Erica Rudin-Luria, president of the Jewish Federation of Cleveland, and Rabbi Dr. Ari Berman, president of Yeshiva University. And before we jump into our discussion, just a matter of housekeeping, we have two members of the JFNA staff, Rabbi Isaiah Rothstein and Kate Green, who will be collecting note cards throughout for Q&A, and we'll be gathering those to address those at the close. We'll leave a lot of time for Q&A, but the questions can be collected as we go forward. So now let's just jump in with a question for everyone. The Pew data tells us that members of different segments of the Jewish community feel like they share very little in common. How do you see this polarization playing out in your communities? And where do you see opportunities for cooperation? So, Ann, would you like to start?
Sure. I have notes. No one else has notes. It's making me a little nervous, but I wanted to make sure I remembered to say everything I wanted to say. So first of all, I'm so happy to be here, and this has been like a really wonderful GA so far, and really this common theme of unity and really unity rather than and bridging has been really quite inspirational. In our notes beforehand, one of the questions that this question ended it with, what concerns you most? And she didn't actually just say that, but I started my answer with what concerns you most. So I'm going to start with that. Well, I want to say this whole concept from the data from the Pew report that's showing that the Orthodox community is growing and the secular community is growing, and what is concerning about that, I want to say that for me it's not concerning. Am I still on? It's not concerning. It's not concerning at all in a way that I wouldn't say it's like, oh my goodness, this is a catastrophe. In fact, I think that this Pew study coming out now is really a blessing and an opportunity for all of us to think about and putting it on the world Jewish stage. And I say this, that I'm happy and think it's a blessing, as someone who grew up totally secular. I didn't do anything Jewish growing up, never mind understanding that there were different denominations. In fact, I didn't know an Orthodox person until I was around 30 years old, and that first Orthodox person happens to be my husband, Jeremy. But, so you probably can guess what happened, but here I am, almost 35 years later, as an Orthodox woman, as a philanthropist committed to the Jewish world, and a leader in the Jewish community. So for that reason, I'm not devastatingly concerned, because I know, and I'm saying that because I don't even know if things were different 35 years ago or 25 years ago. As someone who 35 years ago, that the organized Jewish world, never mind the Orthodox world, was a scary alien place to me. I think when you're in that part of the world, it's the same. So I think we're just, and what I know now, having had a Jewish journey, is that there are beautiful, beautiful ways, guided by our Jewish texts, to help build these bridges that we're talking about today. And I'm really happy because that we have seen this survey in black and white, because my own Jewish journey has made unifying the Jewish people in the forefront of my philanthropy and in my personal mission in life. And really, for me personally, creating a traditional Judaism that is accessible to all people is the center core of my philanthropy. And it's actually not one that I have felt I've had a lot of partners on in the past, and so this is also a very exciting turning point for those of us who this has been a focus for. And I actually want to just point out one thing that I thought was interesting, and certainly interesting for this discussion, and that was when you read the survey, the statement said that the Orthodox Jews and Reform Jews do not feel that they have much in common with each other. And I actually thought that was quite good. It didn't say that they had disdain for each other, or God forbid, hate for each other. When someone says we don't have anything in common, it says to me we don't know each other. And I think that that is a much less scary thing to tackle, but also a beautiful thing to strive for, that we begin to get to know each other. So I think that there will be time in this discussion a little later to go into specifics, but I thought of three things for you as leaders of the Jewish community in North America, of your Jewish federations, of your Jewish organizations, about building bridges. If I could give you three thoughts. So my first thought, and something that I try to do in everything I do, is that be guided in all your interactions with people with what we learn in Parshat Bereshit, that we are all created b'tselem Elohim, in the image of God, which means to me, and I hope for all of us, that each human being is unique in their thoughts and their practice and their history. Each human being is of infinite value. And I believe that we have an obligation to approach each other with love and respect as if it was God standing before us. And I think if we can think about that in our everyday interactions with people. The number two that I was thinking of, and I'm really doing this from, I've been in the Federation world for a long time. I've been a chair of the Federation board and campaign chair and on the JFNA board. So as Federation leaders who I think have an opportunity to really reach the Jewish world in our communities, that we have an obligation to be present in the whole spectrum of observance or non-observance. So I think that we have an opportunity in our communities to be very focused in rejoicing with everyone, grieving with everyone, learning with everyone, inviting people to our homes, and accepting invitations to their homes. And then just number three that I'll throw out there is be the convener, right? Be the person or organization who people know and trust. And once you are a convener, a person that people know and trust, you will have the clout to bring others together who don't necessarily know each other. I was very struck yesterday. It was fun. It was very cute when Rabbi Soloveitchik told the story about the woman who said to Natan Sharansky, you know, when you were in prison, we were all so unified, and now that you're out, we're all arguing. And he said, I'm not going back to jail. The Jewish people are going to have to learn to just love each other for another reason. I think we have to figure out ways to love each other. We don't have to agree with each other. We don't have to practice the same. We don't have to agree on everything, but we have a history, and we should be loving each other. So I wanted to just but I also wanted to say something else about this opportunity to bring different communities of Jewish people together, and that is in our federations, in our communities, we're very focused on how do we bring together interfaith families or secular families. We're looking, how do we bring Judaism to people sort of, I don't want to say on the outskirts, because when you're living on the outskirts, you're on the inskirts, but people who we don't think about, and we bring people things, we go to them, which we should, and we bring them the things where they're at. But at some point, we want to think about, you know, how do we bring the secular community or the conservative community or the Orthodox, how do we bring people together in a room around something that is meaningful and unites us, like Rabbi Howard said, rather than divides us. And I don't know necessarily what all those things are, but I will give you an example. I'll give you two quick examples of things not to do. So my kids, when they were in high school, a local Jewish organization hosted a Shabbaton for all kids in the community, all religious denominations. And they tried really hard. It was a Shabbos experience. And I remember my kids came home and they said, "Mom, I can't believe you sent us to that. It wasn't Orthodox. They were playing guitars. They were doing this. They were doing that." And my very closest friend, who they were secular, she called me and she said, "I can't believe they had a totally Orthodox Shabbos for the kids who weren't Orthodox. They felt totally alienated." So so my first suggestion would be, don't start with Shabbos, right? Find something that is, we don't have to pray together, right? We should be respectful and loving of the way everybody prays, but there are so many other things that I think that we can just talk to each other and find out that we're wonderful, but that we're people just like each other and we become not the other. And the other, just very quick thing, is that to remember, I know that Eric and I had this discussion, that have kosher food. There is nothing more embarrassing for an Orthodox person when they go to an event and they're so excited and they've been invited and everyone has this beautiful meal in front of them and you've got airplane food triple wrapped and a scissor you need while everybody else is having a nice lunch. So I think sometimes we often think about making sure, as an Orthodox person, that people who aren't Orthodox feel comfortable in my arena, but I also think it's very important that we think about making sure that Orthodox people feel comfortable in non-Orthodox arenas. And I'll stop at that.
Thank you so much, Anne, for your words and your prescription for going forward to begin to attempt this important work. So Erica, we'd love to hear from you how you see this polarization playing out in your community in Cleveland, and we would love to hear about some of your strategies as a federation to strengthen the work with the Orthodox community and how you've gone about that.
Sure. So, with my apologies to those in the room that like Pew, I put it to the side. Pew looks at things from a very non-Jewish lens, and so Pew makes the mistake of thinking that Jews are a religious group. Denominations have actually done more to divide us than to bring us together. And actually, the Jewish People Policy Institute in Israel is coming out with a study that Haredi and Israel, in ranking what makes someone Jewish, ethnicity is above religiosity. And so I'd say that that Pew makes things sound more binary or more black and white than they really are. So to me, it's really all about relationships, and that's what we focus on in the Cleveland Jewish community. There's a joke in Cleveland that says, in 1948, two great things happened: the founding of the State of Israel, and the Cleveland Jewish Federation began funding the Hebrew Academy of Cleveland, the very first Jewish day school to receive any Federation funding. And we say it like laughing, we'll nudge each other, is Rabbi Dessler going to say it first, or is someone else going to say it first? But all kidding aside, we see it as a value to build relationships across the community. And we go out of our way to model that so that it's a normative thing. We fund 5-day schools in Cleveland. 3 of them are Orthodox, and we're very involved. We have familial relationships in Cleveland with our agencies. I joke, we are just like family. We are as annoying as family sometimes. We are as lovable as family other times. And sometimes you need a break from each other. But we are family. And I'd say not just myself as the professional, but our volunteer leadership model it So it wasn't a surprise, and I didn't need to say to our next board chair and campaign chair that when the Hebrew Academy opened their new building, of course they were there. It was just a given. And we try to model relationships across the community. Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs said, we don't need to agree with each other, we do need to care about each other. So for me and in Cleveland, we look at it as relational. I think of it and say, you can't care only about some Jews, you have to care about the whole community. And in Cleveland, we feel responsible for you across the community, whether or not you connect to us. It doesn't actually matter. We feel responsible for you, for your security, for your social services, for your education. You're part of our family.
Thank you. Rabbi Berman, if you wouldn't mind sharing with us how you see this polarization between communities playing out in your role.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. Let me just start by thanking the JFNA for inviting me to be on this panel. It's really a deep privilege to be sitting here with such esteemed panelists, with Suzanne as our moderator, with my dear friend Ann as a fellow panelist, Erica, who I just met, and of course Rabbi Hauer, a dear friend. I see Eric Fingerhut in the crowd. It's really just a privilege to have our relationship, Eric, in working on the Jewish community. And I also see Julie Platt over here, and congratulations on her becoming the chair. And now it's been a number of months, and I'm sure she's enjoying every single day as a true privilege, as it is truly a privilege. So it's really a real schus, a real privilege to be here. I'm looking forward to a robust conversation. I could just start in maybe continuing a little bit about what Erica was saying, is that I know we're here to think about the future of the Jewish people. In my mind, when we think about the future of the Jewish people, denominational markings are less important to be in the focus. I say that for three reasons. One, I don't think Gen Z thinks of themselves and identifies in the denominations in that same way, and we should be planning and thinking about for the next generation. I also think secondly, a lot of the old labels of the past don't really fit. Orthodoxy, there's so many different, as you just pointed out, but what orthodoxy means and the different groups within orthodoxy, and what does secular possibly mean? I mean, there's so many different ways of doing Jewish today, and I would really be very hesitant to apply those labels from the 60s and 70s to what's going on in the future. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, we tie ourselves in knots so much with these labels that divide, and I'm pretty sure that those who are against us don't think about the same thing. I don't think Conway is like thinking about Orthodox versus secular right now. And I think it's an important focus, and you really can't emphasize that enough. Now, I remember at YU, after Tree of Life, after the terrible attack happened, and one of our rabbis was sitting with the students. It was during finals at the time. And he said to the students, there's a real difference between when you study Torah or study mathematics. When you study math, you don't have to be a triangle. But when you study Torah, you have to live a life of Torah. And it's not enough for us to sit here and mourn and think about the families. We need to go ourselves. And he piled everyone in a car, and they drove the 6-7 hours to Pittsburgh, and they paid a shiva call to every single family, and then they drove back later that day. It's really important to remember the sense of family and what the commonalities and what is uniting us. Certainly the people against us are thinking of us that way. We need to be thinking of ourselves that way. And that's as a base for our conversation, to think about these 3 points. What does Gen Z think of themselves? How they identify, not to use old labels of the past, and to think about what unites us in our commonalities, which is the base for our future.
Thank you. Put these back on, sorry. So thank you all for helping open and frame the discussion. The data that we have been talking about and looking at shows that the fastest group of young Jewish adults are both Orthodox and Jews of no religion. And that's growing 8% between 2013 and 2020. Why do you think this trend is so strong among Gen Zs? And how do you see that playing out across generational divides in the community? And I welcome Erica if you'd like to.
So, and Suzanne knows I'm going to say this. I don't know anyone who says I'm a Jew of no religion. You know, I think, and maybe I'm the child of New Yorkers, I grew up thinking in order to be atheist, you had to be Jewish. I didn't actually know that there were atheists who weren't. And so, again, I think it's where the data isn't so helpful. But I do think that sometimes people think that they need to reject all of Judaism if they're rejecting religion in the moment. And so I do think that that is something. I don't think then people call themselves nuns or non-denoms or whatever, you know, whatever that, that data is. But kind of picking up on what Rabbi Berman said, and I think I forgot the last half of your question, but I'll say that what I heard, and this is very much my philosophy as well, is it's really about showing up and showing up for each other and working to understand each other. And by the way, I'd say that like within Orthodox Jews, within any two people, I think we're all complex individuals at this point. I think everyone, it's old to say that people have a hyphenated identity, I guess now. Now it's like they've got multiple identities. But I think in all parts of our community, that is the case. And I think for younger Jews, welcoming that actually helps then in bringing them closer. I'll say in our young leadership, we are very, very proud within our young leadership that it is very religiously diverse. It's also viewpoint diverse in terms of the folks around the table. And so at our last young leadership event that I was at, looking around the room, I was thrilled to see the relationships that were being built between people who, based on their dress, I will say came from different synagogues throughout our Cleveland Jewish community. And our missions and our travel, and I will say, like Shabbat dinner, actually, like, so maybe like the starting with Shabbos doesn't work for everyone. I'll say in Cleveland, most of us are in walking distance to each other. And it actually, having people over is a beautiful thing that I think actually does help in building it. But it's really, it's showing up. So we had an incident on Green Road, which is in the heart of part of our Orthodox community, where there was some guy drove by and shot some kids with a paintball on a Friday night. And I'm non-denominational, observant, married to a conservative rabbi. So I don't actually, I'm a Ramah alum, very proud one. But I don't on Shabbat, I don't use my phone. And my security guys know how to tell me things. We've got a whole deal worked out. And so my husband got home from synagogue, and it was during the sheltering in place time. And I said to him, we're going for a walk. And so we walked, a mile or so into Beechwood, walked on Jeff and Danielle Wild Street on Buckhurst. And I was like, we're gonna run into somebody and they are going to tell us what's going on. But I also really just wanted to get a sense of how everybody was feeling. And so I just walked around and talked to people and checked in, and how are you feeling, and what's going on? And then I talked to the teenagers. I have teenagers, so they'll talk to me. And I think showing up goes a very long way towards demonstrating that you care and that you're in relationship, with them, with anyone, actually.
Thank you, Erica. So Rabbi Berman, as we are talking about diversity of ideas and embracing those diversity of ideas, many of us have seen Yeshiva University in the press, national press, over the past few months. How have your recent experiences informed your views about how we bridge some gaps and accept diversity of ideas in the future?
Right. So first of all, on the specific matter, we're actually currently in ongoing litigation, so I can't.
She was talking about the basketball team.
We have very serious litigation of the basketball team, too. But so I can't address that specific, but I can address the broader question, because those experiences have shaped a lot about, or informed thinking about the future, bridging for the future American Jewish community, which deal a lot about students and a lot about our values. And let me just give a little broader context about Yeshiva University, students and values, and what we're doing. The first thing, and this really is in line with Pew, is that Yeshiva University is growing significantly. I mean, the heart of our institution is our undergraduate schools. Just this past year, we've grown close to 20% in our undergraduate school. Our applications have skyrocketed. And it's really just right in line with Pew, because our undergraduate schools are deeply religious. It's a deeply religious experience. All of our students study hours of Jewish studies. They receive 2 degrees. Most of our students, at the end of when they graduate, they have an associate's degree in the Jewish studies, and whatever else the second major that they're doing, the academic major. We have a dual curriculum, which is very, very intense, and includes, of course, Sabbath observance and kashrus and tefillah. There's minyanim, there's prayer services, all throughout the campuses, all throughout the day. Now, for us, this isn't a secondary feature. This is actually the differentiator in our campus, meaning everyone knows that Yeshiva University is a top-tier university. Right now, we're actually ranked 3rd in New York City. It's Columbia, NYU, Yeshiva University, and then Fordham. And all our students have access to incredible Jewish and YU alumni network, and it's amazing. But other top-tier universities similarly can speak about those facts. What differentiates us is the Torah and the religious studies. But it's not just that there's an increase in that. What we're finding is that there's an increase in our students' success and their sense of responsibility to the world. Meaning our students are worldly, they're interesting, and they graduate to the top professions. So we have right now in our school, we have a champion table tennis player who didn't go to the Olympics because of Sabbath observance. We have a chess master who's internationally ranked like 400 in the world from Russia. And last year we had the basketball team that was #1 in the country. I mean, #1 in the country. And what we're seeing is that these students aren't just leaders on campus. They're the leaders of the future industry, and they're the leaders of the Jewish people of tomorrow. And that's why it's so essential that they're rooted in our core Torah values. Our core Torah values include that they represent the Torah with integrity, that they respect the unique and irreplaceable value of each human being. What Ann said before, we have actually up on our walls, it says infinite human worth on our walls, what we call Torat Adam, and that they treat everyone with compassion. Everyone with compassion. These are our core Torah values. They guide everything that we do, and everything we don't do is guided by our core Torah values. And it's our core Torah values that led to the creation we just announced last week of our new student club to support our undergraduate LGBTQ students who are striving to live authentic Torah lives. And really everything that we're doing is guided by our core Torah values, and it's necessary. And what we're seeing, it's necessary today perhaps more than any other time, it's crucial, because the future of the Jewish people will very much ride, we believe, on the shoulders of our graduates who will be the bridge builders, of the future. We need students who are Zionist and pro-Israel, who are willing to stand even when it's countercultural. Our students go out to Times Square with an Israeli flag, and we have one night where we dance, and we're not playing defense on our campus. We're playing offense. Like, we are rooted in our Jewish values, and we bring it out, with joy, with absolute joy. And to have students who authentically represent the Torah and do so with love in their hearts and respect for each person. Okay, that's what Yeshiva University does. And as we continue to educate these kids, these students, they're just going to become more essential. And that's sort of one of the lessons that I've seen in this whole process, is how important that is, how important it is now, and how essential it's going to be towards the future.
Thank you, Rabbi, for addressing the issue to the best of your ability, given the strenuous situation that and lens you're under. But we appreciate you being here and sharing words with us. So now, Anne, turning to you, we understand how philanthropy is trying to create systemic change across our Jewish ecosystem and Jewish life. How do you address these challenges as a philanthropist? And do you see that others are paying enough attention to the issue?
So I actually thought, because truthfully everyone in this room is a philanthropist, or you are someone who is working for an organization that exists because you have philanthropic dollars to invest and spend, that truthfully this whole, when you asked I saw the question obviously in advance, like how does philanthropy make a systemic change? To use philanthropy to make a systemic change, we as philanthropists or organizations with philanthropic dollars, it's really not so easy, right? One of the things that I think about is, and that we all know, is that I could give to everybody, to 100 everybody's every day, right? We all get asked to give to really wonderful, good causes, but what happens if you don't really have a plan or you're not thinking about your philanthropy? And so I guess one of the things that I would just share with you is that my husband Jeremy and I, who are partners in our philanthropy, took a whole year during COVID, we hired a consultant to sit with us and think about how do we want to make systemic change in the world, and what would that look like, and systemic change in the world in the areas that we care about and that are important to us. And literally, we spent a whole year. We figured out, we came up with a mission statement and a vision statement, and we hired Dina Fuchs, who's we made a foundation. We have an executive director, and we actually even have a website now, and we gave ourselves a name. Micah Philanthropies, and we gave ourselves that name in the same way that we sat and we tried to figure out what's important to us, what is the change we want to make in the world, and we actually picked that name. Instead of naming it after ourselves, we named it after the prophet Micah, based on his famous quote, which is, "He has told you, O man, what is good, only to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God." And I really feel like even naming our foundation and our philanthropy that way, that too helps keep us focused with what our mission is, and how to invest in the Jewish world in that way. And my sense is, from talking to my fellow, unless you're part of a foundation, a lot of foundations have already done this work, but my fellow philanthropists were like just intrigued by this. They hadn't thought about it and thought about really sitting down and thinking about their philanthropy and thinking about how to make systemic change in the areas that they're most passionate about. And I actually find myself talking to mostly women, because that's who I know in this field the most, about how they too can think about their philanthropy. Our mission, one of our core mission for us and me as a person and our foundation is to make traditional Judaism more accessible to everyone who's interested in it. And truthfully, I love being an Orthodox Jew. It was like the best discovery in the world when I was on this journey. And I know that Jeremy and I think that Orthodox Judaism, traditional Judaism, has so much to really offer the Jewish people. So we spend time thinking about investing in areas that will invite people into sort of traditional Judaism. One of the things that, we're talking about bridging between Orthodox and secular communities and everybody in between, we also find ourselves really trying to be a bridge in the Orthodox community amongst ourselves. And so one of the areas that we invest in, where we hoping that it helps to make sort of systemic change in the world, is in Orthodox women's leadership. And we invest in Orthodox women's leadership across the Orthodox spectrum because we want to make a traditional Judaism that's appealing to people and not a turnoff. And I will say, even from my own experience, when I first met Jeremy, and he was great, and my friends were like, "You're dating an Orthodox Jew? What about the women?" And I was like, "Well, I'll wait to see about the women until I get to know him better." But the truth is, it really was, what about the women? And this was 35 years ago. We weren't seeing Orthodox women in leadership positions. Back then, they weren't presidents of synagogues or or presidents of schools, never mind being heads of school or in rabbinic positions. So that's an area that we invest heavily in, because not only do we think it's important for the rest of the world to see a place where women can grow and shine in Orthodox Judaism, we think it's a real lost opportunity for the Orthodox world to not have 50% of the population in inspirational, brilliant women in inspirational positions. We also, and we support those women's programs across the Orthodox spectrum. I am the chair of GPATS at Yeshiva University. It's the graduate program for advanced Talmud studies for women, which is producing some of the most serious and wonderful Torah scholars women Torah scholars today. And we also support Yeshivat Maharat, the first Orthodox yeshiva ordaining Orthodox women. And we also fund a program called Devorah Scholars through JOFA. My friend, the director of JOFA, Daphne Price, is sitting here. The Devorah Scholars is a program. We fund a program for Orthodox synagogues who will hire Orthodox women are women from GPATS and Maharat and elsewhere in clergy or clergy-like positions in Orthodox synagogues. So that's an area that we have been very focused on. But also, as an Orthodox woman and as an Orthodox family, Jeremy and I think it's very important for us to be in spaces that you don't always see Orthodox people in, and in spaces that we believe passionately in, and that we hope that we can be examples for other Orthodox philanthropists and leaders in the Jewish community, in places like Federation, and JFNA is one of my favorite places in the world, and Federation. I've been a past Federation board chair and campaign chair. We're big supporters of PJ Library, of Prisma. We care deeply and fund significantly in the area of the environment and climate change, where we also don't see a lot of Orthodox people. But we want to be role models we want to be role models for Orthodox people, but we also want people who are in this space to know that the Orthodox community cares. And so that's one thing. There was, I don't even know if you actually asked this question, but I thought this question: are there times when we've actually used our philanthropy? Have you ever used your philanthropy to encourage people to do things? I think I asked myself that. And so my question that I'm asking myself was,
I can go retire now?
You can go. So this is, so sometimes, look at, being a philanthropist is a very powerful thing. And I don't take a minute for granted, or I'm grateful every second that I have the means to help people and to invest in the Jewish people and in Jewish organizations. And I always try my hardest never to be the kind of donor or philanthropist that says, oh, I gave you money, you need to do X. But I'll tell you a quick story where I sort of did that, and I hope not really, but Jeremy and I, pre-COVID, just before COVID, we were honored by JOFA, the Jewish Orthodox Feminist Alliance, at their gala dinner. And I used it as an opportunity. Now, JOFA is a lightning rod, I will tell you, in the Orthodox community. But it's something that we really cared about. And so I invited a lot of my friends from the places that wouldn't normally come to a JOFA dinner. I invited them to come as my guests, so they didn't have to worry about paying and using that as an excuse. But I invited all my friends from all arenas, and people came because they came for me and they came for Jeremy. They do that, but I wanted to use it as an opportunity for people to get to know each other. So I said to Daphne, I'm going to do all the seating for this dinner, or at least who I know. And I will tell you, my friends, I had a lot of friends from JFNA who were coming, and other secular places, and the first thing they called, they were like, okay, we're coming, but what do we wear? Like, the first thing they're worried about is, do I have to wear a dress? Like, I'm going into an Orthodox institution, and I'm like, you can wear whatever you want. It's middle of winter, I wouldn't come in a bathing suit, but whatever. And so at this dinner, I was able to really sit. I seated my secular friends, I seated my conservative friends, my Reform friends, my friends from YU, my friends from the OU, my friends from really all over, and I strategically thought about where I was going to seat them. And after that dinner, I got more thank yous after that dinner saying, thank you so much for seating me next to Nechama Price, who's the head of the GPATS program. Thank you so much for seating me with Sarah Hurwitz. Thank you so much for, people were like, I never knew. There was a friend of mine from the Boston Federation said, Nechama.
I just want to get to questions.
Okay. All right.
That's okay.
Anyway, so I'm done.
Oh, no, thank you for sharing. And we will. I definitely did want to save time because I'm sure people have questions.
I saw Isaiah
So
picking up some.
do we have somebody reading them or collecting them?
There they are.
Great. And I'll read them. I'll be the representative, but please feel free to answer as appropriate. Please share what the Orthodox Union and Yeshiva University are doing to proactively build bridges with the non-Orthodox community. Are there programs or strategies that we can follow to build trust? So Rabbi Hauer and Rabbi Berman, I think these are addressed to you.
We, the Orthodox Union as an organization, tries to be a present and active participant around the broader Jewish communal table. We try to always be there. We have a shared faith, and we need to occupy a shared space. We need to work together to build trust, and we view it as both a responsibility and a privilege to be there as a partial representative of the Orthodox community in playing those roles. I referenced before an example of Israel Free Spirit, our birthright program. Israel Free Spirit is a birthright program. It's not an Orthodox birthright program. It's an Orthodox Union-sponsored birthright program, but we follow all the rules of birthright. We do things like everybody else. And sometimes in our world of, thank God we have a very, very full plate, people can ask the question as to, do we need to do this department? Like if we stop doing it, this is something that others will do. There are other birthright providers. Very often as an organization, you have to ask yourself, should I be dedicating efforts to something that can be done by others? And part of our internal response to that is, yes, others can do it, but then we won't be there doing it together with the Jewish community. I don't think there's time, or I don't want to commandeer the microphone here, but I hope that gives a flavor. Throughout our departments, whether it's our youth arm, NCSY, which is together with all the Route 1 participants and bringing our younger students to Israel, whether it's our work on college campuses, JLIC, which is in the Hillel houses and working together. We try to be together because we need to be together.
Sure. I have to say my personal experience is so different from the questions and the tonality. I travel around the country for Yeshiva University, and I have really heard a lot more about commonality and shared spirit. It's true for our supporters. It's true for our trustees. Our trustees are women and men from different perspectives and backgrounds that come together because they support an institution that I think is valuable. It's true about our students. Our students come from all continents, internationally, different backgrounds, and they come together. It's not, I think there's a much greater focus on common purpose and people finding their individual journeys within their context than is implied. I'll tell you one story just because people seem to like basketball, but when we started winning, I remember a few years ago, we started winning, an enormous success. We made it to the NCAA finals, halavai. We made it to the NCAA tournament. It was a big deal. It was the first time we ever made it to the NCAA tournament. And the game was in York, Pennsylvania, which is about 3 to 4 hours away from New York, and it was Erev Shabbat. It was like Friday afternoon, like 3 or 4 o'clock. So there weren't a lot of travelers from our metropolitan fan base that can make the game. And yet, when our team showed up, they found a group of fans that outnumbered the other team. And they went over to them and they said, "What's going on? Where are you from?" And they said, "We're from the local Reform Temple, and we're here to support our team, Yeshiva University." And that is the spirit that we found. Our students know that when they play for Yeshiva University, they're not playing for a school, they're playing for a people. And that is the spirit, it's in across our halls. And truthfully, that I found when I've crossed this country, that people feel. That sense of shared fate and destiny.
Great. That's great. Thank you. Getting some more questions. I guess this could be for everyone. How do we work across denominations to collectively invest in making Jewish education financially accessible?
I think this is a question that all of us, frankly, struggle with. I think the communities that have done the large day school endowment funds or have done significant things with the Foundation for Jewish Camp and One Happy Camper have taken steps in that direction. But this is one of those where I would say we need all the brains in the room, and please feel free to call me and tell me, because we know that we have 5 great day schools. We know we need more options for education, even beyond those. We actually then have 3 smaller day schools as well that I shouldn't forget. But I think that's a space where some great minds should come together and share then with the rest of us, please.
So I'm not sure if the questioner was talking about Jewish day school or Jewish day school. It just said Jewish education.
Jewish education.
But I will say, wearing my past chair of Prisma hat, and there's actually another session going on at the exact same time about the cost of living of Jewish life, which includes Jewish day school, that there are quite a few successful models across North America now where people are really putting their brains together on tuition initiative programs. We do one in my hometown as well of West Hartford, Connecticut. And I would say there's no great answers, but there are wonderful communities like Metro West, Montreal, we have Toronto, we have Hannah Olson and Alyssa Mayer. I see them in the audience from Prisma. You can reach out to Prisma. Prisma was formed, if people don't know about Prisma, speaking about wonderful collaboration between denominations. Prisma was formed about 5 years ago. It was a merger of the Orthodox Yeshiva University and Schechter schools and Ravsak community schools and Pardes Reform schools and PEAJ, if people remember PEAJ. And we are now one flourishing, wonderful North American Jewish day school organization, and there is so much work being done in this area on affordability. So if you're looking for that in your communities, I would recommend that.
Or I should have said they could move to Cleveland because our day school
Or
tuition
West
is
Hartford.
less expensive already. But please, Rabbi Berman.
I suggest moving to Cleveland also.
What about West Hartford?
I really enjoyed the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame when I was there. So I just want to add how essential scholarships are, essential. And, it's almost as simple as people paying it forward. Because so many people benefit from scholarships in their own education. It's as simple as getting across paying it forward. But the strategy that's been effective for Yeshiva University is to differentiate and to find yourself in the next generation. So for us, for scholarships, we don't just say give to scholarships. We have IDF soldiers at Yeshiva University. We have lone soldiers at Yeshiva University. They go to any other college, they have to hide what they did. Okay, they come to Yeshiva University, they're heroes. We have women in tech. Literally, our Stern College students, McKinsey, Amazon, BlackRock, top professionals. Okay, if you see yourself in that, invest. Jewish educators, women Jewish educators, like Anne has done for GPATs, and prioritizing her foundation work. Like, find your passion, okay? Or just beginner students. We have JSS, Mechina. Find your passion and invest in the next generation. We have found, thank God, we just announced last year a $613 million campaign, because we even raise money according to our values, okay? And we have already raised over $250 million. And the large majority has been in scholarships. And the way that we do it is by focusing, just focus, where do you want to see, who do you see yourself supporting or the next generation becoming? Very important, not just to talk about affordability, but to that direction, we found great success with.
Yes, Rabbi
May I?
Yes, please.
Yes, okay. So if I may, I would just mention 2 things. First of all, the Orthodox Union, along with others, we have the Teach Advocacy Network, which is specifically focused on government advocacy in a whole number of states in order to be able to gain state support for private religious education. And it's an effort which has yielded great success in many places. In Ohio, it was not an Orthodox Union success. It was, I think, other advocates, Agudath Israel and others, who did it. But that's been a game changer in Ohio. Teach efforts have been a game changer in Florida. And it's a big deal, and it's to help all the private schools, certainly all the Jewish private schools, all the private schools, all the religious private schools across denominations and faiths. And if I may, I would also say something else. Day school education works. It works, it's demonstrated, it's proven, it's accepted. Day school education is even more effective than birthright. And we do not demonstrate our commitment to this strongly enough. How can we be a game changer? By directing our philanthropic dollars according to our values. Jewish day schools were created for orphans. They were created for people whose parents couldn't teach them. That's what the Talmud tells us. There's a communal responsibility that no child should be kept away from a Jewish education because the cost is prohibitive. Not only that they get a scholarship, but they shouldn't have to apply for one. And we're so far away from that. And part of it is ingenious solutions, but part of it is just saying, this is a priority, we got to act according to the priority.
Another question I have is, how do you reach people who don't feel Jewish enough to join these spaces?
So I guess that's me. So it's not for this session, but another time, I'm happy to tell any of you about an amazing program we have in Cleveland called J-Hub, which is an outreach program for intermarried families. And we find, frankly, that it also attracts other people who are in-married sometimes who do not feel welcome. But I think the lesson in it is that many Jews see themselves as not welcome in a space. And so I've had conversations with Orthodox rabbis who have said, well, but what are the Reform rabbis thinking about me? And I've had conversations with Reform rabbis who have said, well, the Orthodox rabbis don't think I'm Jewish. And so you have all of these people who think that they're not welcome, who are worried about what each other are saying. And we work, I'll say, and it's funny, we were just talking about this with a different young leadership event that we're holding at our Young Israel. And they're doing a sit-down dinner because that's like retro for young leadership, I'm told. You know what? Hey, if they want it, then like fabulous. But so I had some questions, right? How will we make sure that everybody feels welcome? We're not the SNEAS, we're not the modest police. Like, how are we going to make sure that the Orthodox community members in the room feel comfortable and not that their space is being disrespected depending on whoever wears a tank top with lots of cleavage? And ultimately, actually, we spoke to the rabbi of the synagogue because I wanted to make sure, but really it stemmed from a place of everyone who walks into that event, whether they are Orthodox, ultra-Orthodox, whatever they are or aren't, and not just in religiosity, whatever they are or aren't, we want them to feel welcome in that space. We're the table that our message is, we want you to count yourselves in, we count you. And I think sending that message and then demonstrating it, and again, I'd say our volunteer leadership lead in this. And then, the wild chair was part of it, and the event chairs, and you engage others in it, and it just builds out from there. But for all of the people who think that people don't want to walk into a space or that they're opting out, most of it's not conscious opting out. They don't actually feel welcome. And I'll say one fast, there was this sign up for this J-Hub program, and a little girl saw it. This is at a street festival. And the staff reported back to me that she tugged on her grandmother's arm and she said, "Grandma, they're here for me. They're here for me." And I think about that story. I want everyone to feel when they see anything coming from our federation that we're here for them. I don't care what kind of Jew you are, we're here for you. And that's like our, that's our thing. So.
Can I respond to that?
Sure. No, go ahead, Ann.
So I just want to say, I don't really think it's about events. I mean, I think events are important, and I remember when so I mentioned that I was not Orthodox always, and I remember I got a job, how I met my husband was I got a job with the Jewish Federation in Springfield as the JCRC director, which was a totally, like sort of a political interfaith job. I had never really done anything Jewish, and I was so sure that everyone I saw, I had like a big know-nothing written on my forehead. I was always so nervous about what I didn't know. And even, I remember our first staff meeting, the director of our federation said, okay, for the next staff meeting, who's doing the Devar Torah? And I had no idea what a Devar Torah was. I mean, sometimes we get so used to our language and things that we do that are natural to us that we think are like secular, like they're not. And I remember I went home and I thought, who can I even ask? I didn't volunteer to do it because I had no idea what it was. But I guess I think it's, so I guess I just would say two things. Always think about, I wouldn't use any Jewish words for anything when we're thinking about people who don't feel Jewish enough to participate. Use English, because using Hebrew is very, very scary and turn off for everybody. But I also just want to say that I think before you even get those people into an event where they're welcome, that you have to just get them talking to each other. Or there's no magic bullet to this. It's person by person by person. It's not magic. It's human relationships. It's how we become not the other to each other. And so before we can even get someone who would love to come to one of Erica's wonderful events, I think we have a lot of work to do on the ground before that.
But yeah.
But
Thank you. I actually learned something in my work I was doing with Penn Hillel, when there was always a question where some students didn't feel comfortable coming into the building. They didn't feel Jewish enough to participate in the programming. And it wasn't such a brainstorm, but it was, well, why don't we bring programs to where they're at?
Sure.
Why don't we go to the fraternities, the sororities, bring programs to them there? And that was just flipping it around. So not so much about bringing people necessarily to the things we're making. Let's make programs for people and meet them where they're at. And that was just a light bulb kind of switch for me. But I think we are at the end of our time here. I know some of us will stick around if there were questions that couldn't get addressed. But I want to thank our panelists for sharing their thoughts on how we can work together and bridge the gaps. So thank you so much.